Grab your cocktail and get ready for this episode of the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast. Welcome to the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons while drinking an old fashioned. I'm Brian, and it's my pleasure today to introduce somebody that, maybe a big state has heard of, but most of the world hasn't. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Robert Park. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brian. I'm very pleased to be here today. I appreciate it.
Well, you're speaking too soon, my friend. We haven't got through the podcast.
That's right.
Have you seen our podcast before?
I have. I've seen several episodes. I need to watch more, but I have seen quite a few, actually.
Well, perfect. So we like to have fun, but we don't put people in an awkward position on purpose. So what we like to know on every episode, we like to know as much about the man as we do the Mason. So let's push Masonry to the side for a second. Tell us who Robert Park, the man, is. And don't leave out anything important. I got your dossier.
Well, let's see if I can give you a brief overview.
All right.
I am an attorney. I'm a partner with a firm called Old Fashion Masonic in San Antonio. I am an oil and gas attorney. So what we do here at this firm is we represent landowners against oil companies. We do all sorts of work in that vein. I do oil and gas, renewables, conservation easements, farm and ranch, anything that has to do with land, I deal with. And I do litigation as well as transactional work. I was born in Dallas, went to high school in Austin, and then came down to San Antonio for law school, went to St. Mary's, and then started working right when the Eagleford was taken off. I was a landman, did title work, and then started working at this firm right out of law school. I'm married, been married for a long time, almost 18 years, and have three daughters who are 12, 8, and 6. 12, 9, and 6. We just had a birthday.
There we go.
Other than that, Masonry takes up a lot of my time outside of work. We do a lot of stuff as a family. We're always traveling around. That's where I am right now. I got to tell you, between the family and my law practice, I have, at this point, I think 5 associates who do a lot of my work now, which is kind of transferred from being a boots on the ground lawyer to more of a manager. Still do a lot of the legal work, but it changes once you're a partner and have a lot of associates.
Right.
Between that and Masonry, I'm a pretty busy guy right now.
Like it. So you mentioned the term landman. So Taylor Sheridan's got a new series out, Landman. All of a sudden, Did your job just get sexier?
Yes, I have not seen that yet. I plan to watch it. I've talked to a few of my buddies who have seen that, who are still landmen. And they say it's a very, there's some stuff in there that's true. I heard it, but it's kind of glamorized. I heard that show was based off the podcast Boomtown, which was actually a very excellent podcast if you've heard that one. But I need to check that out. Yeah, it does look. That's not really what we were doing when I was a landman. It was
all right. Well, I gave you a chance to have kind of a cool story, but we'll mark that off the list. So, all right. So we know who Robert Park the man is. So walk us through, because this is a Masonic podcast. Walk us through your Masonic journey from where you started to where you're at currently.
Sure. Well, I guess my Masonic journey started. My grandfather was a Mason. He was a Scottish Rite Mason as well, and a Shriner. And I knew that when I was young, didn't know much about it, but he would talk about it, and he would mention it every once in a while, and my family would as well. But I really didn't do much with it. I didn't know anything about it. He never told me any details. And my dad wasn't a Mason, so I never got that from him. It's interesting. The guy that introduced me to Masonry, I went to law school with. But before that, when I was in college, I was an art history major, and I studied a lot of classics. And
did you not want to make money later?
Oh my God. Yeah. Good Lord. That's why I went to law school. I will tell you, there's not much you can do with an art history degree unless you plan to get your PhD and really go into it. And that was not I bounced around for many ideas. I went to flight school after that because I wanted to be a pilot. And then I went to law school after that. But when I was in college, I was very interested in, my thesis was on basically Dionysian imagery and archaic Greek pottery. I was very into the Hellenistic period. I did a lot of studies on the mystery religions at that time period, and I read a lot on that. And so when my buddy actually started talking about what Masonry was and gave me a monitor, and I read the first pages saying that we come from, we're an heir to some of these mystery religions, I was like, wow, this is fascinating, because I thought they were all gone. I need to check this out. And so he actually took me to Alamo 44, which was the lodge I joined. And I went there for about, 4 or 5 months because, my lodge, I think they do it the right way. You have to show up, for a long time and actually get to know those guys before they'll sign your petition. So I was there for a while doing that.
Brother Dave Yonce would love to hear that.
Yes. Well, so my buddy, he was my senior deacon in my initiation, and then he left. I never saw him again. He basically moved, out of the city. He is now the district attorney in Cuero, actually. But he brought me in, he led me through my first degree, and then I took off running with that. Within a year, I'd become, well, I guess about a year, 2 years maybe. I was junior steward, worked my way through the kitchen with my buddy Tony, who I was initiated with. We were always kind of one right after the other.
Yep.
Went through that, worked my way through the chairs, became master of that lodge. After that, I was district deputy grand master during COVID, which was a very interesting year to be a district deputy. And I was also appointed to the Civil Law Committee for the Grand Lodge of Texas. So I started doing that work around the exact same time.
Was that mainly because of your art history interest?
Oh, yes. Yeah,
okay.
they like that.
I assumed as much.
So, yeah, I started doing that, became very active in the Scottish Rite, and worked my way up to being Venerable Master. And now I'm chairman of the L&M, or the Library Museum here in San Antonio. And that's been, talk about a lot of work. We can get into that later, but a lot of what I've done over the past couple of years has been to try to save that building. And I'm sure you've never been, have you been in the San Antonio Scottish Rite Cathedral?
I have not.
It is an amazing building, but like many Masonic buildings, there wasn't a lot of planning done for the future.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, we had a high membership, and it was like, well, we'll never have a problem here. So we missed many opportunities. We had property, we had a parking lot, or we had an opportunity to do things that would have, basically ensured our financial success for a long time.
Right.
But that wasn't done. And so that building needs a lot of work, and it's a very expensive building to maintain. We ended up just getting a deal done with the San Antonio Philharmonic, and it looks like we're going to be able to keep that building running.
Oh, nice.
They intended for, which is great. So other than that, being on the Civil Law Committee and has really kind of thrust me into the Grand Lodge politics and what's been going on there. And I've become very good friends with a lot of people in that, like, you start very small with your lodge. It's still my home lodge, and those are my best friends, but then you kind of grow to where your friends are all across the state.
Yep.
And once you're at that kind of level, it's a different group of people, but there are a lot of great people there too. So that's where most of my time is being spent right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're busy. Masonry, you can be busy. I always tell people when they join, oh my gosh, how much time? You can be busy one day a year or 12 days a week.
Correct.
I mean, that's just what, but the advice I always give is it's okay to say no. And once you become a Mason, you'll understand why it's okay to say no, because all the new people, besides joining all the other bodies, you get voluntold to do everything.
Yeah. And again, I'm a York Rite member, Commandery, I'm AMD, I'm Shrine too. I mean, I can list all this stuff out, but if you really want to do, you got to choose something to kind of focus on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just kind of you're in all these places, but you don't have enough time to actually do anything. And so again, Scottish Rite is my love. I love everything in Masonry, but I love the Scottish Rite. That's where I've devoted most of my Masonic energy there between the Grand Lodge stuff, but love Scottish Rite.
Yeah, no, everyone's got to find their lane, and we talk about it a lot on this podcast. My Masonry looks different than your Masonry, and that's the great thing about the fraternity as a whole. There are lanes for everybody. You can come in and want to run the show. You can run the show on this side. You can sit back and just be a participant in your community. There's so many lanes that your Masonry, and my Masonry has changed over the years, right? I came in just to be a Shriner. And then I just want to be a Shriner. I don't care about the other stuff. And I got tricked. And next thing you know, I'm master of the once largest lodge in the world. And it's like, that's not what I wanted to do, but it was the best path. So everybody, whatever you think your journey is, it might be different. Just let it happen.
No, and again, and you kind of, when I joined Masonry, I didn't really know exactly what it was about. Like I told you that the link there was kind of some of my classics history. But once you kind of get into Masonry, I found that it was not what I was expected, but it was exactly what I was looking for in a way. And once I got to the Scottish Rite, it was even more so. It was the same thing, like things that I had thought about or read all kind of came together in some of these other areas of Masonry. So yeah, you do kind of discover it yourself. You don't go in really knowing what it is. And
Right.
I was very lucky that I found that path pretty easily. And I had some pretty good mentors bringing me there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we as Masons are doing a proper service to our folks coming in, we need to really qualify them and talk to them and find out what they're, you think you might want them here, but that may not be their spot. And I think that if we get out of the way and not think that we know what's best and help be give good counsel, we won't have a membership problem, right?
When we go to why aren't young men joining question, I have a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
But I agree with you on that. But we can get into that later because
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff I do want to say about that.
Sure, sure. So you were master of the lodge. What year were you master of your lodge?
I think 2018, 2019, I have a picture over here, but yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was 2017, 2018.
Okay. So let me ask you this. If you were to be master again today, what's one thing you would do different that you're like, I didn't either get accomplished or I wish we would have done this as a lodge? What's the one thing?
Uh, I really can't say there's one thing. It's more of how you approach it to me. Like a lot of guys go into being master, and I did this as well with a huge plan. Like, I want to do this, I want to change this. We're going to have education nights. I'm going to get out this trestle board. We're going to do all these other things. Like, you have all these ideas you're working through the chairs because you're watching stuff, as you're coming up, you're saying, I could do this better. I could get more engagement over here. I think what every new master finds out their first time is that you can't get all that stuff done. Like it ain't gonna happen. You need to, pick one project. Like if you can get one project going or like one thing, like say it's an education night or having speakers in or doing some sort of fundraiser and have that thing survive your year and actually, become part of the lodge, you've done an incredible feat.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So again, if I had to go back, I wouldn't have put all this pressure. I'd be like, being master, like you want to go in there and change things up and have people like show up for all this stuff. But again, we're a volunteer organization. You can't expect these people to just do what your plan is. Like you have to make it fun for them too. You have to involve them and you can't change it up too much. It's like incremental because again, people can vote with their feet. If they don't like what you're doing, they won't show up to your events. If they think you're pushing too hard, they won't show up to your events. And I see this happen with a lot of people that have great ideas and they wonder why no one's showing up to this stuff.
Right.
And like you're treating them like employees. You're not treating them like this is a volunteer organization. And again, you as a master, you have the power, but just like Grand Lodge, you're almost a trustee for the lodge. Like
Yeah.
it's not your year. You are just in this position for the rest of the brethren there.
Yeah. The Grand West votes, and no different in your lodge.
Yes.
You're a spokesperson that year at best.
I mean, again, I think you're supposed to set an example too. You're supposed to make
Sure.
it fun. You're supposed to get the membership engaged. You were supposed to let them do things as well, like spread this stuff around. I mean, it is a lot of work, but like a good Masonic leader, like not just in Masonry, but again, if things go right, you don't take credit for it. And if things go wrong, it's your fault and you take all the blame for it.
Yep.
Like that is what you're supposed to be doing. If you have a good
Absolutely.
year, it's not because of you, it's because of everyone else in your lodge.
100%. 100%.
So
100%.
again, I think that's one of the great things about Masonry, though, and I'm not even going into the esoteric side of this, but it teaches people some lessons they don't really get to learn anywhere else. Like we are kind of a microcosm of like the democratic process, like getting in there, learning how to speak in public, learning how to phrase things, learning how to debate people that are your friends, like learning how to take a project and see it from start to finish. Like all this stuff, a lot of people don't really know how to do, like how to lead people in this type of group. And going through the chairs and becoming a worshipful master does give you kind of a crash course in that if
Yeah.
you do it right.
Right.
And again, I think when you come out of the East, like, that's why, the whole idea of the grumpy past masters, but they're not grumpy, they're just realists at that point.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So you've done some DDGM work. So let me ask you this. Aspirations to be on the Grand Lodge line of Texas?
Yes, yes, I do. I've made myself available for the Grand South in Texas this year.
So for those who don't know, and they don't do it in these jurisdictions, in Texas, he's not making himself available like he's going to the bar wearing some tight jeans, making himself available. He is saying, Grand West, I would like to run for an office and I'm available, and my name's going to be on a ballot, and if you vote for me, great. If not, I get it, but I'm going to be available on the list. Is that the abridged version?
That is the abridged version because we are very averse to campaigning or saying that you're running for something.
Yep.
We have a lot of rules about that too.
Electioneering.
Yeah, you're making yourself available, which means you'll be in the packet that they send out with your resume, your CV. I mean, anyone can be nominated. You don't have to make yourself available. Like at Grand Lodge, someone can nominate you from the floor and you can still run. But this is the way you do it if you want to do the traditional, like going through the state, visiting, lodges, going to our forums. We have multiple forums that the NWSA's put on where they're not debates, quote unquote, but that's you
They're
go there.
mini town halls. I'm telling
Yes,
you, they just got a town hall vibe to me.
they do, and they're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I'm the two other guys who are running for the Grand South they're good friends of mine actually, and they're good people. So we have a good group this year.
Oh, nice. Well, that's what at the end of the day, you want to elect the best people for the organization, right? It's not an emotional thing. It's voting in the best interest of Texas Masonry.
Yes.
It's not, this is my boy. He'll follow, he'll do what I tell him to do. It's none of that. No different than frankly, any other election in the world. It should be what's in the best interest of insert thing.
It should be. And I'm very happy that this year, Keith Reynolds is from San Antonio as well. He's one of my running mates. And he is a great Mason. I've known him for a long time. He is a good friend of mine. So again, it's one of those things where, I'm happy that that's the competition I have this year.
Yeah. Well, no, you want quality, and I love that too. So let me ask you this. So should you get elected by the Grand West, and should you become Grand Master one day in Texas, what's your number one goal for Texas Masons?
Okay, so now we're gonna get into it. I don't want to get.
I feel like I'm going to have to lean back and get comfortable. You're going to do all the attorney words on me, and I'm going to have to sit back and relax.
No, I don't want to get too. I don't want to be controversial or get too fiery, which is good because
we're never controversial on this podcast. We avoid that at all costs.
So I'm not going to get too fiery, but here's the problem. Here's one of the reasons that I'm running. I'm running because like I said, I was on the Civil Law Committee for the past 5 years at this point. So, I go to the trustees meetings, or when I was chairman, I would go to the trustees meetings as general counsel, basically. That's not what it is, but you'd have someone from the Civil Law Committee and someone from jurisprudence go into these meetings. I was very involved in everything that was happening. I've gotten to see Grand Lodge from a different perspective than I was, when I was just a Blue Lodge Mason or Master of my lodge. And what you said earlier about you should elect the best qualified people to run the fraternity, I kind of want to expand upon that a bit because my issue is how things have been done in the past is that it seems to me some of the trouble that we ran into last year, and I'm sure all your listeners know, the issues we had in Texas. To me, it was caused because we have certain members who believe there are tiers of Masons, that there's somehow a Masonic aristocracy or a Masonic elite, or that once you hold a certain position or you've come up to a certain level and are maybe members of certain invitational only bodies, you've basically become this Masonic Areopagus, for lack of a better term, and that the regular Masons are down here, you're up here, and you know better for Masonry than everyone else because of the positions you have held and because what you have done, or your titles as a Mason. And again, you have these groups form, and these groups are kept alive by basically patronage and also membership in certain bodies that are invitational only. And for a long time, these groups would basically select and groom the next person to run for the Grand South. You would have people like, this guy gets it, he kisses the ring, we're going to take him, we're going to make him make the circuit here, and this is our guy, and he is going to be elected next. And to do that, we're going to give him committee positions. We're going to put him in these bodies. We're going to make him known throughout Texas. And again, this has nothing to do with whether they're qualified or not. This has to do with someone that, basically has given their assent to whatever agenda there is controllable, will not cause waves. Basically does what these people think Masonry should be, right? Because they know better than the average Mason what Masonry should be. And I'll be very blunt with you. I have heard from some of these people in this group, people that have big titles and have held big positions. I've heard from their own mouths what they think of normal Masons, and it is not something that I would want to hear from someone in those positions. This is the problem, and this is why we ran into the issue we had last year, because you have someone like Brad Billings that bucked that system of patronage. Basically, he came in and he jumped into the line, and there were people behind him saying, no, wait a minute, this was my turn. I did all this stuff. I was selected by this group. Like, I got in these groups. Like, I did this and this and this. This is my time. And he got elected, of course, and it really caused some issues with that group. And those issues kept going. Like, this is my problem here. I talk a lot. This past year, all the talks that I've given at different Masonic events have been about dispute resolution, because I hated what I saw over the past couple of years, especially coming from our leadership position in Texas. And we'll get into some of these next questions. You have to have leaders that believe in the Masonic ideal if you want to get new members coming in. You can't have dysfunctional leaders, because that will bleed down into your lodges. It'll bleed down into the individual Masons, and that will affect our membership. And again, I have statistics to back this up that we can talk about later. So you had that going on, and my issue is pride and ego are huge issues that we need to solve right now. You shouldn't have pride and ego being a Masonic leader. You hear the word like servant leadership thrown around quite a bit, but that's what it really is. You want to be a Masonic leader because you love the fraternity, you love what we stand for, and you are a trustee. Now, we call them trustees because there's a legal term for that too, but they are trustees in every other sense too. We are entrusting you with leadership of this group, and you are doing it for us. They have a duty. A trustee has a duty to put the beneficiary's interest over their own interest. Again, it's not to feed pride. It's not to feed ego. It's not to get your picture on the wall, but a lot of people treat it like that. And then when they are passed over or something happens, they get very angry and they retaliate. And I've seen the craziest forms of retaliation over the past 2 years. Our Masonic laws that are meant to be instruments of justice being twisted and used for perverted ends. I can't even go into some of the details, again, because I don't want to, number one, and number two, I just don't think it's appropriate here. But I've seen things that made me so angry that, again, I'll leave it at that. That is one of the reasons why I'm running for Grand Lodge. I want that system dead. I want it dead. I want all Masons meeting together, from the youngest Master Mason to a past Grand Master. There is no Masonic elite, and we should be electing those who can best serve the fraternity to these positions. I want to say there's a ceremony, and I don't know if it's the Grand Lodge of Oklahoma, but I love this idea that after the Grand Master has served his term, they get him up on stage and they turn the lights off. And when they turn them back on, he's wearing a normal apron like a Master Mason.
Our Grand Master of Kansas did that.
Is that Kansas?
It was Michael Stoops, Grand Master of Kansas. As he was exiting, he came out. And now, I'm a huge Stoops fan. A lot of people say, oh my God, the pomp and pageantry. I loved it because, one, I'd never seen it before, but he was the one that really promoted "You Are Grand Lodge," not him. And it's one of the many things I like about Stoops, but Stoops did that. He came, the lights went down, and there was like him talking about what went on through the year, like a video. So it was the ultimate David Copperfield. You're looking up here. Next thing you know, the lights come on, and he's all in Master Mason attire.
I love that. The
It was so cool.
That is amazing. Because then you get down and you sit with the brethren, and you are again on the level with the rest of your brethren. Again, in Texas, we don't have that. We have an area backstage where all the past grandmasters go to rope themselves off from the hoi polloi. And, again, I like this idea a lot more. Again, respect is earned by actions, not by titles.
Yep.
And this is what Masons need to remember, all right? We give our past grandmasters these aprons to wear. We give them these things because we want to respect them for what they've done. If they think they're entitled to it just because of the position or because of their title and not because how they treat people, I'm so done with that. It has no place in Masonry. And but this is the idea. Like, you come to a crossroads. Like, when you're coming up as a Mason and you get more and more honors, more and more titles, and people start listening to you, you come to that crossroads. Are you a servant leader, or are you now Masonic aristocracy? And a lot of people go off that way. I mean, I don't know if y'all have the same apron presentation that we do, but we tell our candidates, our new Master Masons, that maybe one day in the oncoming years, you will have pendants fit to grace the diadem of some Eastern potentate, but never again. There is no greater honor than a white and spotless apron. All right. You don't have to be in these secret clubs or invitational only bodies. You don't have to have a title to have a white and spotless apron. That is the only thing that matters for a Master Mason. And that's what we need to get back to, because I've seen way too much stuff in my short time around here, and we have to fix it. Again, this is the reason. Well, I didn't intend to run for Grand Lodge after what happened last year. I was trying to fix some things and make sure we came together as a fraternity, but we have a good track. Like, we're going in the right direction, and I wanted to make sure that nothing derailed that. And so that is the reason I'm running, because I want to make sure that our leaders at Grand Lodge get along, that they can check their pride and their ego, and that they can do what's best for the fraternity and for the individual Mason and not for themselves.
Right. Right. So you mentioned the invite only group. Is that an agenda item in the future to eliminate the asking somebody to join the York Rite or Scottish or whatever that may be?
No, I don't want to eliminate that. I want them to stop being I want them to stop being weaponized, basically. Like, a lot of these groups, they have purposes, like they have good purposes. Like, I don't want to get into details in any of them, but these groups were formed for a specific reason. Like, they teach a specific philosophy, or they do a specific degrees. But instead of actually doing the work the group was made for, they basically turned into, I would say, planning committees, or basically you funnel these people in here, and then you use those people to run for these positions.
Understood. Yeah, makes sense. So let me ask you.
Go into that though. Here's another. I don't want to be, again, try not to be too controversial here, but when it comes to some of our pendant bodies, let's talk about the Scottish Rite, because I love it. All right. If you are going to lead one of these groups, like, if you really want to lead a Masonic group, it should be because you love the philosophy behind it, or you love some aspect of it. You believe in what that group is teaching, right? So let's say you want to be in a Scottish Rite leadership position. Scottish Rite teaches that, Kabbalistic symbolism, alchemical symbolism, are pretty important for understanding a lot of stuff in the degrees. I mean, we literally tell that to the candidates. If you think the Kabbalah is trash and you think alchemy is garbage, which you have a right to do that, you can think that, but maybe you shouldn't be head of a Scottish Rite.
Right. Because if you're trying to be that, or you're there to burn it down, so to speak.
Well, just, why do you want that position? If you don't like what the organization actually teaches, why do you want to be in a leadership position there? Yeah. It's like if one of my bishops was like, hey, the Bible says a lot about this Jesus guy, but I don't know if I really believe that. Well, maybe you shouldn't be a Christian bishop. Like, this is some of my problems here. Why do you want this leadership position to begin with?
Fair.
And if you don't believe in what the group is doing, how can you be an effective leader, and how can you expect that organization to actually thrive?
Yep. So we won't go into the detail of the stats on here, because we've seen him as Zachary Houston. Is that his name?
Heston.
He posts so many stats. It's amazing. We're gonna hold an episode for him to come on and just go through the numbers, because it's really fascinating, because he really pumps out a lot of data, and I think it's hard to know where you're going unless you know where you came from, and the data is important, and we have so much of it now. We use it. So push that to the side. Based on what your gut is and what the data you've seen, why do you think more men aren't joining Masonry today?
Okay, so I think there's a couple things. I'm trying to get my thoughts together so I don't just go off on a tangent, to start with here. Um, so I think a lot of men, well, the Northern Jurisdiction did a great book on this. It is a study. I think The Path Forward is what it's called. Have you heard of that book?
I have.
Yeah, and we saw a presentation by the author in New Mexico a while ago. And one of the takeaways she had is we have a lot of people that are interested in Masonry or have heard of it. If they knew what the Masonic ideals were, they'd be even more interested in it. But again, when they contact lodges, I think what she said was 2 out of 10 got a call back or someone actually following up with them. And so you have 80% of these people who are interested who are not getting called back. There's no follow up there. So again, we have a lot of people interested in Masonry. We're not doing a good job following up on that. From a more universal perspective, though, I kind of take issue with our obsession with membership, honestly. I kind of want to ask, why do we want more members? And I'm not being facetious with that question, but what is the goal to getting more members? Is it because we want to prop up our buildings? Is it because we want more dues coming in? Is it because it's not fun to preside over a lodge with only 5 people? Does it make us feel important? We want a lot of people there. Is it because this is our organization and we want more people in? So because we have a good time, we don't want it to die. Like all of those reasons are selfish reasons. They're all like egotistical reasons, right? And again, you're also treating Masonry like a business. And I go into this a lot with my talks too. Like, there's traditional business leadership and there's basically servant leadership. Traditional businesses is all about profits. That's what you're trying to get. You're trying to make money, or there's something that your business is trying to do, right? People tend to treat Masonry like that. Like the point of Masonry is to get members in. It's all we talk about. It's like, how can we get new members? We tend to measure our success by how many new people we're bringing in. Once they're in, though, what are we doing with them? Like servant leadership is about people. It's about expanding what you already have. Masonry should be focused on the membership we have. Because I'll tell you, not everyone in our fraternity is a perfect ashlar. We still have a lot of work to do within the fraternity. Like, why are we so obsessed with new members? Why can't we focus on the membership that we have? Because that's what we're supposed to be doing. And again, I don't know an answer to that, but I really do believe that if we did that, if we focused on our membership and actually practiced what we preached, like we use all these big words, we say, how great our fraternity is. Like we tell this to our candidates and to our new Masons. And if we don't follow through, if we don't act like that, if we don't actually give them something, I mean, would you buy diet pills from a fat man? Like you wouldn't. You ask why people aren't sticking around or, why we're not getting these guys coming in. If we did what we were supposed to do and made the membership we have excited about Masonry and feeling like it was worthwhile, we wouldn't have to worry about new people coming in. They would be coming in. And this is my viewpoint on this. We fix our own house and we won't have to worry about the membership issue. We are letting the tail wag the dog on this.
We've said this on this podcast before. We're not going to invite anybody over to dinner until we get the house cleaned up.
Yes.
So I think we're aligned. We've got some presentations that'll launch in March. That one is quality versus quantity, and the immediate next week it's quantity versus quality. And we're going to pose 2 arguments and because anything that's controversial, that means there's something compelling on either side. So let's throw it out. And what do you think it is? It's somewhere in the middle. You need a quantity to pay the bills. You need a quality to preserve the fraternity. So it's an interesting balance.
Yeah, again, but if you're saying the sole reason we need to bring in more members is to preserve the fraternity, this might be controversial. I just take issue with that because, again, you're treating this like a business. And I don't think it is a business. I mean, if we had 3 guys in Masonry, we could still practice Masonry. If we were improving the lives of those people, like Masonry is alive and well. And I say this again, there's Masonry with a capital M and there's Masonry as the fraternity. When I say Masonry with a capital, I mean those ideals that, from time immemorial, the reason why you and I spend so much time in this fraternity is because we believe in those ideals. Yep. Like the fraternity itself, like Pike said this over and over again, like institutions were made for men, not men for institutions. You can't sacrifice yourself to preserve an institution that is not doing what it's supposed to do. Again, man over institutions. I would say masonry over institutions.
Fair, fair. I love it. So I'm going to take you to the most important question of the podcast to close it out. This may be the question. If you answer it correctly, that's why you get elected. If you don't answer, you're going to go all the way back to this question. So be careful, my friends. So up on the screen, you're going to see 4 things. One must go forever, my friend. It was never invented. So let's talk through it. So you see tacos, any kind of tacos. It could be beef, chicken, shrimp, pizza, any kind of pizza, any toppings, wings, any rub, any sauce, whatever, and burgers any way you want it. My friend, for your Masonic journey, which one has to go forever? And talk me through it, because the Grand West is watching.
Oh my God. Yeah, this one might end me here, but this is not even a tough decision for me. The wings got to go.
So let me tell you, you're probably safe. It's a pretty neutral. Most people now say the wings because there's a variety, and most people say the wings because there's just a lot of work. They're little, and Texans say, "Hey, we're from the beef. We do beef here."
Could never get rid of the tacos. I eat way too many of them. Every week. Can't get rid of the burgers ever. The pizza. Yeah, I like pizza, not as much as the tacos or the burger, but the wings, I like wings. If I never ate one again, wouldn't make me sad.
Fair. So, Robert, I appreciate you coming to the Old Fashioned Masonic Podcast, my friend. Cheers.
Cheers.